I'm a photographer and currently work for a large studio that specializes in fashion. I enjoy taking photos of all kinds, but I got into this business mainly because I love capturing people in their most natural state. There's nothing natural about fashion photography. Everything's set up, enhanced, and modified. What I mean to say is, I do fashion photography for a living and not out of love. My real work begins once I'm out of the studio. 10 years ago from today, I was out on the streets taking photos of people going about their business. I was in the process of making a photography book, a photo essay if you may. The thing is though, taking photos is easy, but getting permission to use them is extremely difficult. In the afternoon, I moved the location from a commercial district to a small park, and that's where I saw a father and daughter walking out of the park. The young girl looked adorable, and I was hoping that the father would allow me to keep the photo once I showed him my business card and explained the work I was doing. Unfortunately, he got angry fast and told me to get rid of the film. I apologized to him several times and assured him that I would cut out the segment of the negative with his daughter once I was in the studio. The father gave me a nasty look, then walked away without saying anything further. 5 years had passed from that point, so that makes it 5 years ago from today. My cousin, who's a detective, was going through the files from some old cases. I went to visit him at his home, and I basically walked in on him while he was organizing the files. I asked him what he was doing, and they responded, they're cases I couldn't solve. I've got no more leads to follow and the cases have gone cold. Unfortunately, it's time to put them away for good. I took a closer look at one of the case files with a photo of a young girl on it. I did that because she looked so familiar. And that's when it hit me. That was the girl from the park. I told my cousin about the girl and they showed me the sketch of the suspect. The facial composite was created with the help of a couple of witnesses at the park. I couldn't believe it when I saw the drawing. It was the man at the park. The man who I thought was the father was in reality the abductor. The truth is, I never disposed the negative with the girl and the father in it. I later processed the negative and showed the photos to my cousin. Indeed, the girl was 100% the same girl from the file. As for the abductor, he didn't look exactly the same as the sketch, but you could tell that the resemblance was there. We now had the photo of the perpetrator. But sadly, even with the new lead, the girl and the man were never found. I've stopped taking photos of random people from that day. I had nightmares about the girl for many weeks before they stopped. I think about her a lot even today, and there's this enormous guilt in me that refuses to go away. I wonder if I could have done something to help her that day. I feel so sorry for her. I have to take it back to 10 years ago from today in order to tell you this story. At the time, I was 22 years old and was working at a bottling company. I was new there and they would put me to work on one Sunday every single month. The last Sunday of every month was used to clean up the factory and therefore there were only a handful of us doing the work. Most of the guys were new and we were learning from two of the more experienced workers who had the luck of teaching us. Then one day, I believe it was the third Sunday shift since I began working there, I was in charge of cleaning up the machines at the southeast end of the factory. The two managers put the four of us, the relatively new guys, to begin on each end of the factory. Naturally, we were all separated to different corners of the floor, especially since the complex is fairly large. I must have been cleaning for about half an hour when I saw a man who I've never seen at the factory previously. He was standing at the entrance of one of the rooms we no longer use and began gesturing for me to come to him. At first, I pretended like I didn't see him. I didn't want to bother and he wasn't my boss. I was already pissed off for having to work on a Sunday. I didn't feel like taking orders from a guy that I didn't even recognize. But the man was relentless, if anything. He stood at the entrance for over a minute and continued to gesture for me to come. I looked at him and he smiled. You know, I figured at least he's nice. What more choice did I have? I walked toward him. The man turned around and went inside the room as I was headed to his location. I was not amused. I still have hours of cleaning left to do, and this clown was probably calling me to help him with something. I followed him inside the room, and it smelled awful in there. It smelled like mold and sewer combined. It was really dark in there, but I could still see the man waving for me to come from the far end of the room. That's when I heard someone yell, "Oi, Kuroda! What are you doing in there? Get out! This room is off limits to everyone." It was one of the managers who had ordered me to come out. I stepped out of the room and told him that someone had let me in there. I let him know that the stranger was wearing our uniform and that I didn't recognize him. The manager turned on a small flashlight and told me to follow him. We went inside the room. He illuminated all four walls, but no one was there. He then said, "Follow me, but stay a few steps behind." Seconds later, we were in the middle of the room and the manager pointed to a hole the size of a door. He said, "This is a room the company used back in the days to do the first stage cleaning of certain bottles. That hole is a drainage and it used to be covered with a metal grate. We had an accident in here about 12-13 years ago. A young man by the name of Hiroshi fell in there when the grate flipped sideways due to the faulty design of the drainage. He suffered a severe brain injury from the fall. We took him to the hospital right away, but he died from the injury a few days later. You know, I didn't believe any of the stories people have told me over the years. We had plenty of people complain about seeing ghosts or unauthorized personnel lingering around the room. I myself have never seen this supposed ghost, but I admit I did find the door getting unlocked on its own to be weird. The door to this room never stays locked no matter how many times we lock it back. It's crazy, but I think I believe you. Kuroda, don't go in there. Ghost or no ghost, it's not a safe place to be." Then the manager just left after telling that short story. I quit that job not long after. It didn't sit right with me to continue working in a place where someone had tried to get me killed. I say that because I think Hiroshi was trying to lure me to the drainage. In fact, I'm certain of it. The factory shut down some 2 years after I quit. From what I can gather, there were a few more accidents after I left the company. No one died from the accidents, but I hear the last guy was injured pretty badly. The closing, however, was due to bad business. The lack of profit just happened to coincide with the injury. I'm glad they shut down before someone else died in their room. Who knows how many more people would have gotten hurt if they weren't forced to shut it down. The building still stands though. I see it every time I drive to my office in the morning. I hope they demolish it soon and make it disappear. That building shouldn't exist anymore. It was late at night and I had just clocked out of my part-time cashier job. I had to get to the bus station and therefore I walked 2 blocks down toward the shopping mall. From there, I was about to turn left at the corner when I heard a loud sound of tires screeching, followed by a heavy thud. I instinctively turned around and saw that someone was hit by a car. As I was making the call to the emergency services, a small crowd was gathering at the scene of the accident. I walked toward the scene when the call ended and saw a woman turn away from the shock of seeing the mangled body. A young man tried to help the poor girl, but there was an older gentleman who warned them not to touch her unless he was a doctor. The young man took a step back and could only watch her slowly bleed out. Then I noticed something odd. There were 4 men in total, including myself. The 2 women who were at the scene initially had left after they saw the extent of the girl's injury. They just couldn't bear to watch her. But then there was this young girl in a white dress who looked to be 18 at most, and she was staring at the victim's body with the saddest look I had ever seen on a person. I took a few steps closer and got a better look of the face of the victim. That's when I realized the girl who was staring looked identical to the victim. I thought for a second that they could be twins. I walked toward the girl in the white dress. She then noticed that I was looking at her and for some reason began running away from the scene. I chased after her for a brief moment, but then she disappeared as soon as she turned the corner. It was as if she had evaporated. I tried looking for her in the nearby area, but she was nowhere to be found. I then went back to the scene of the accident as the sound of the siren from the ambulance got closer by the second. I asked an older gentleman if he had seen the girl in the white dress. I posed the question specifically to him because he was standing right next to the girl. The man told me there was no girl in a white dress and angrily told me to go home if I had nothing better to do with my time. I then said to him, "Sir, I'm being serious with you. I just saw a girl standing right next to you and she looked exactly like this poor girl on the ground. You must have seen me run toward the corner. That was me chasing after the girl before she disappeared right in front of my eyes." The older gentleman responded, "If what you're saying is true, when you go home tonight, don't walk into your home like you would normally. Take your shoes off a block away from your home and hold them in your hands. Then walk backward all the way to the entrance of your home, unlock the door without turning your lower body, and walk in with your back facing the door. I want you to leave your shoes at the entrance, bring out a cup of salt, then spread them around generously on your shoes and the perimeter of the door. Come morning, do not wear the shoes. I want you to take them outside to a place where you can make fire. When you're ready, burn the shoes, then dump them somewhere far away from your home. After doing so, go straight to a supermarket and purchase a bag of sea salt. Rub your hands with the salt and take the rest to your home. You want to spread the salt around every windows and doors you've got in your home. Keep the salt sitting at those locations for a month before you clean them up. Then dump the salt in a body of water, like the ocean for example." The girl met a terrible end at such a young age. She doesn't want to leave alone. She's angry, afraid, and could become vindictive. If you're not messing with me, then heed my words carefully and do as I say. If it's true that you saw her and she noticed that you did, then she could make you do some terrible things to yourself and to others. As of today, you are the closest connection she has to the world of the living. The connection is you, and you must break it. He then handed me a business card and said, "You've got my direct line at the back of the card. Don't call me because you're afraid or confused. I don't have the time to babysit you. You call me only if you mess up something or you lose control of the situation. Lastly, you better not be lying to me. I'm not a person to be messed with, but it isn't me you should be afraid of if you're lying. Defaming the dead has its consequences. You must never offend the spirits, especially ones who died under tragic circumstances." When I told the gentleman that I wasn't lying, he responded by saying, "Piss off then, I've told you everything I know." I did exactly that. I left the scene of the accident and did everything the man told me to do. Then after a month later, actually 40 days later because I wanted to be sure, I went to the beach and dumped the salt I cleaned up into the ocean. I lived in fear for the entirety of the 40 days of wait, but nothing weird happened and I've been fine all along. It's possible that I was okay because I did what the man had ordered me to do. But then it's equally possible that I'm okay because I had nothing to worry about to begin with. Whatever the case, I didn't want to take a chance and I didn't. I'm okay today and that's all that matters.